even what you guys had a year ago has been improved upon at this point right now. And everyone who essentially purchased the app access a year ago is getting all of these new features. But if you guys release new stuff inside of the app and you have purchased it 6 months ago, you get access to the new features inside of the app. So I guess my question here is that what new is coming down the road? And if you can share any of that exclusively here on the Dr. Cliff Show.
Yeah, absolutely we can.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Dr. Cliff Show. I'm Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I am joined today by some very special guests from Neurotone AI. I have the co-founders of Neurotone AI, Dr. Miles Aaron, who's the Chief Operating Officer, and we have Rick Carlson, who's the CEO. Guys, thanks for coming all the way out here to visit me on the show.
Thanks for having us, Dr.
Yeah,
Cliff.
super excited. Thanks for having us.
Now, we've all known each other for a good amount of time at this point, but can we give everyone kind of an understanding of what Neurotone AI is first before we go into some introductions here?
Neurotone's a company that's been around for 2 decades, actually, and probably the claim to fame to the company is an original product called LACE that was developed in the early 2000s. LACE is an auditory training and oral rehab methodology that was turned into a product to help people on what is often the neglected side of the communication pathway, the brain. It helps people process sound that your ears deliver to the brain, right? 100% of the sound that is coming in through your ears is processed into meaning by your brain. And so with LACE, what we allow patients to do is practice and become better at processing that sound and turning it into meaning. So we've got a 20-year history of that, decades of research, as you know, which is like just critically important to back up what we say we do for patients. And last year, we took a huge step forward with a product called LACE AI Pro, utilizing some of the latest technologies like artificial intelligence, not in a scary way, not in a scary way.
It's going to kill us all kind of thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think some fun and interesting ways, and so we'll, I'm sure, talk about some of that stuff. And you know, that's been a watershed moment for our company. We've got, you know, thousands of providers offering LACE now, LACE, the new product, LACE AI Pro, and I'll stop there. But
well,
that's
awesome.
who we are.
You know, I mean, kind of to give people some context, back when I was, when I first became an audiologist, in fact, even before this, when I was an audiology extern, I first stumbled across LACE because there was a collaboration between the company who had made LACE at the time and Cycle, which was a patient management software.
Right.
And there was a way for me to get patients access to auditory training through a website. I think it was like lacelistening.com
Yeah, that's right.
or something like that,
Yep.
to where they could do auditory training and it would pull their scores into my patient management software, so I could essentially give them, you know, encouragement and say, hey, here's how you're doing with the auditory training. And for those who are interested in this concept, just like you said, Rick, the brain is what we hear with, right? Like everyone thinks like, oh, well, how do you hear? Oh, with my ears. Well, not really. I mean, you hear with your brain. The ears have to get the information to the brain, but what your brain does with it allows you to hear or not hear.
That's right. Exactly right.
And so I was a huge fan of LACE even before you guys completely revamped it. And I even have patients now who were patients with me when I was recommending that like old school version of LACE that was CD based and online based, to where they're now using the app version of it and they think it is a million times better. And I love it because I kind of associate it with, like, if you're going to go and get a knee replacement surgery, right? And I think you even shared your story with
I
this.
got one. It's not even theoretical for me. That's right.
And I have to imagine that when you went in for your surgery, the surgeon's like, well, you don't just get the surgery and then you're done. Like, you do physical therapy.
It would be malpractice if a surgeon didn't say, hey, you need to do physical therapy to get the most out of knee surgery, for example, because you're not going to get the strength back. Like they can fix everything mechanically in the same way maybe hearing aids can augment your ears, any damage to your ears. The knee, they can go in there and fix it. Mine is titanium. I'm very excited about that. I can still get through, the normal
The
metal
airport metal
detectors. I
detector.
think
Yeah.
I got to go through the one where you
Oh,
put
you
your hands.
do?
Yeah, I can't actually go through the other one
Oh,
because they
interesting.
got to pat you down. It's
Okay, yeah.
very uncomfortable for everybody. But the surgeon did an amazing job. But it was the physical therapy that got my knee working again, that built the strength up, that gave me the range of motion, and I think it's a fantastic. I think that's where you're going. It's a
Absolutely.
fantastic metaphor or analogy to what we're doing with.
Well, we all have these patients as audiologists who are like, you treat them with hearing aids, you optimize everything following the best practice protocol, and they're still like, can it get any better than this? And it's like, well, it can, but you have to do training now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've been such a big fan of doing auditory training for, I can't even say the past 10 years. I haven't been an audiologist quite that long yet, but for almost the past 10 years, I've been encouraging patients to do specifically LACE, honestly.
Yeah.
But since you guys kind of came out with the revamped app, it's made it a lot easier, and utilization of it has gotten a lot better with my patients as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here today. But
Yeah.
before we get into that, like, can you guys kind of help me understand the transition? And Miles, I know that you kind of came on board here, you guys really together with Neurotone AI to revitalize LACE. But how did that transition happen?
Sure. Well, first, I should mention that we involved the original co-inventors of LACE, which is Dr. Robert Sweeto and Dr. Jennifer Henderson Sabis from the University of California, San Francisco. And so we wanted to start and make sure all of the science, all of the methodology was correctly implemented, that the clinical outcomes for patients would be just as good or better than before. So that was the baseline. We looked at what people struggled with. People struggled with the content being a little bit dry and boring, with not enough content in areas they were interested in. There, in parallel, were massive improvements in technology in the way that we build apps since the 2000s to 2025 now. We figured out gamification and engagement and making things fun, and AI has made it possible to make things just way more engaging and interesting. And so the heart of LACE AI Pro is all about it being the auditory training experience being fun and engaging, where we used to have to send a actor to a studio and they would read some nonsense sentence like the dog walks across the street backwards from left to right, and your reward for understanding that correctly, and we'd play the sentence with some background noise because LACE helps you improve your hearing and noise, but your reward for hearing it correctly was that you would get another boring sentence that made no sense, and patients were just like, this feels like training. And so what we've done with LACE is we said, actually, let's go out. We have 27 content topics now across anything a patient could probably be interested in learning, and we're always expanding that corpus of content. But you've got gardening tips and cooking tips and Bible verses and jokes you can tell your pickleball team, and you've got your memory lane is a series of things where you can actually listen to content from radio and TV from the 60s or 70s or 80s, your favorite decade. And so we've really worked hard to make LACE the content side more fun, and then we've integrated all of those familiar gamification things that you would see on an app like Duolingo, which is like a popular language learning app and popularized some of these things, but different sort of opportunities to win badges and achievements and gain levels and a number of other things that keep people engaged. And then I don't want to spoil it, but we've taken AI even a step further, and I think we can talk about how we integrate those things in a moment.
I can't help but feel like we've switched roles here. This is the PhD who's responsible for all the science, and I'm the guy who's about engagement and fun and making it interesting for patients. And so what you heard from Miles is usually the kind of thing I'm talking about. We haven't really even covered what we do as as a product from the perspective of helping patients. And what we do is we help the brain in 5 very distinct ways. I'll start with the classical version, which is signal processing. To bring this to life for you, if you're watching this, it's a super common problem that patients, even with the very best devices, the top of the line devices, they've invested in their hearing, they've got a great set of hearing aids, still have problems in speech and noise. Well, that is a signal processing issue. The sound is getting to the brain, but the brain is having trouble parsing out the signal that you want to hear, your friends, your family, the person sitting next to you at that restaurant booth, from all the background noise. The booth next to you, the music that they pipe in to make that restaurant exciting. It's a challenge. And so we have speech and noise exercises which focus on signal processing. Another way we help the brain is with rapid speech. There's somebody in most patients' lives that is just a rapid talker.
I've been accused of being one of those.
Yeah, from
Me
time
too.
to time, I think we're all guilty, right? And in fact, yeah, anybody can turn into a rapid speech person when they get excited. They start talking faster. That is another super common problem. And what is going on there is the brain is not able to keep up processing the signal at the speed at which it needs to hear the person's second sentence. You're still trying to process the first sentence, and so you can't pay attention to the second. You can get good at all of these things through practice, right? So we've done signal processing, we've done the speed at which you process that information, and then we move on to things like working memory, retaining the information in a conversation. A classic example: you go to that same restaurant that I've brought up, I've conjured up here for our discussion, and the server is listing off a long list of your daily specials. Here's the appetizers and what we've got for your main course and the desserts and so forth. It's a lot of information to sit there and retain as well. So we call that working memory, not as opposed to long-term memory, and it's absolutely critical to communicating. And so once again, these are things that you can practice and get better at.
It's interesting. I found the working memory part of the training the most difficult for me.
Sure.
Because you don't realize how much you just let things go. And then when you start getting quizzed on, like, well, what is it that you actually heard? And you're like, well, shoot, I guess I wasn't really paying attention.
It's shocking,
right?
isn't it?
It really is shocking.
It's absolutely
But you
shocking.
absolutely get better at it the more that you train on it.
That's right. And so that's a third way. Another one we have is something called missing word, which is actually about deductive reasoning. So this happens to all of us. You hear most of what somebody said, but maybe a horn goes off in the background, or you just there's a background noise or what have you, and you didn't quite catch every word that the person was saying. Being able to use deductive reasoning, the context about what you did hear, to fill in the blanks, if you will, is a skill that you can practice and improve upon as well. So that's the fourth way that we help the brain. And the fifth way, full disclosure, we're not there yet. We've been working in the background on something that I think your listeners, I'm going to call it lip reading. I think in the industry we say speech reading. But you pick up a tremendous amount of information from being in the same room, being able to see the person's expression. Not just, by the way, the reason we don't say lip reading is it's more about your entire face, right? And being able to pick up all that information. It's why it's easier to understand someone when you're face to face versus on the phone. And so we'll be adding those exercises to LACE as well. So we help the brain in 5 distinct ways. All of that is complementary to getting the signal to the brain in the first place, which is where hearing aids play the role. I mean, these things are the miracles, right? They're amazing devices. We do not do what hearing aids do, nor do those devices do what we do. And so they're highly complementary. And I think you would agree, the combination of the two is what maximizes your ability to communicate and understand.
Totally agree. I mean, because again, individuals who want to maximize their hearing, you may have some people who feel like they've maximized their hearing just by treating their underlying hearing loss with hearing aids. But if you really want to ensure that they're hearing and understanding the way that they should be at a maximal level, they have to do some form of auditory training, right?
That's right.
And the better the auditory training, the better the outcome.
That's right.
Now, this auditory training that you guys are talking about here, is, like you alluded to, has been around for a long time, over 20 years at this point, speaking specifically of LACE.
Yeah.
But you just added new things to this auditory training that did not exist originally. You know, Miles, you were talking about adding new unique content, right? You're not getting these nonsense sentences, which I would argue that the dog walking backwards from left and right across the street is exactly what my new puppy does. So maybe
Maybe not so much nonsense.
Maybe
in your
not
case.
so
Hold
much.
on, my dog does do that.
He's a weird dog. Anyway, but yes, adding in more relevant stuff that people are actually interested in, because when you're in the app, you can go and select the types of content that you're interested in. If you're not interested in gardening, you don't select that as part of the content that you use. But if you're interested in the Bible verses, if you're interested in jokes, for sure, you can select that, and then it uses that type of content to do the training, so it keeps you much more engaged throughout that. That is something that did not exist with the original iterations of this.
Yes. So LACE has been around for 20 years. The co-inventors of LACE, Dr. Sweeto, they are actively involved with what we do. Dr. Henderson Sabis, they've guided everything we do. If they were in this room today, they're fantastic people, by the way, and if they were in this room today, they would be the first to say the original LACE was boring, just plain boring. You knew you were doing work when you did this. You sat in a room, you listen to these nonsense sentences methodically for 30 minutes. I just can't paint a picture of how boring this was. And again, these guys would admit this. They would say this as well. So when we created LACE AI Pro, our sole mission, in addition to creative, on top of the actual core technology that helps people with their processing, was to make it entertaining and engaging. And so now, as Miles alluded to, we've got thousands and thousands of exercises where you pick what you're interested in. If you want to play trivia, you can play trivia. If you want to listen to jokes, you can do that. If you want to improve your vocabulary or learn about European history or history of the US, or there's just dozens of categories, and we're adding to those categories all the time. Sports facts. You mentioned having a fairly strange animal, a fairly strange dog. You can listen to fun facts about animals,
Right.
Or anomalies and interesting facts about the human body. So there's just mountains of stuff that you can listen to, and we've turned all this engaging content into auditory training lessons. So while you're exercising your brain, trying to understand things, you're learning stuff too, and it's fun and interesting. Miles mentioned gamifying it, and that's a term, a software term. But what we do there is we've built in, frankly, psychological tools that keep people motivated. So there are certain levels that you reach while you're training, and you're always striving for that next level of achievement. We keep track of how many days in a row you've done it. We call them streaks, and we've got people that have done this for months, month after month after month, every single day, like have done it for 250 days in a row. And so we've worked really, really hard to make it engaging and fun. And then we mentioned AI, and again, to some people that's a scary word. We've used AI to create all that content. It was just so much content, we would never have been able to do it in the past. So that's one way we use it. And then we've got these AI personal trainers. Or coaches right inside the app. And so when you use our app, there's a good chance that our app will address you by name. Hey, Cliff, good to see you. You ready to start your auditory training today? Yeah, let's get started. So as a patient, they walk you through and keep you motivated and sort of guide you through your training, such that you only ever, some people are afraid of software, like phone apps and things. you, as a patient, you only ever have to say, yes, I heard that, no, I didn't, and I want to continue or I want to stop. That's basically the entire user interface. So we've made it really, really easy. And I'm proud to say that we have patients in their 90s who would self-describe as not being very technically savvy using our app every single day. And it's because we worked really, really hard to make it engaging and fun and simple to use. And we haven't even gotten to our big sort of icing on the cake thing, which I'm going to continue to tease. We'll get to it in a moment.
Kind of speaking onto some of those points there. So me having personal experience with the new app inside of my clinic for about a year at this point, utilization is definitely much higher. I mean, it was borderline like pulling teeth trying to get patients to go online, get signed up, essentially purchase this auditory training on their own so they could go and do it. And then eventually it got to the point where like I wasn't using the software where I could actually track them. So I was just kind of like, I hope they're doing it, right? And there was really no interaction from me to the patient on that other than they'd come in at their 6-month follow-up. I'm like, hey, have you been doing the auditory training? Oh, no, I forgot about it. And it's like, okay, like, am I really fulfilling my role as an audiologist to ensure that best practices are being followed and that they're actually utilizing the tech? One thing that we really haven't talked about is that me as the professional who has dispensed this app to the patient through my clinic when they either do hearing treatment or they're looking for that additional benefit if they haven't done training already, I get them started on the app. I get to track how their progress is inside of the app. They also can get notifications from me saying, hey, great job, or hey, why haven't you been doing your training? Like,
Yeah, right.
get
Yeah.
back on it, right?
Exactly.
So it has allowed me to be a better provider for them by utilizing this form of auditory training. And you know, some patients struggle a little bit more. Some people's auditory systems are just like they're so far gone that like, hey, if I can get a 2 decibel signal to noise ratio improvement, I'm like, hey, that's great. Like you can now, you know, hear in quiet environments where you couldn't even do that before, right? So and everyone has their own level of performance on this. And the nice thing about it is it kind of like scales the complexity or the difficulty level to the patient. Miles, can you kind of speak to that aspect a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll mention you mentioned patients sticking with it more, and I'll just say here we're now have significantly better compliance and a number of people finishing the program than you see pound for pound compared to physical therapy, which is the gold standard in medicine for rehabilitation. And like we were saying, there's a very direct analogy to surgery, and anyone would get physical therapy after surgery, and we're now seeing better compliance than with physical therapy. So it's pretty exciting. How does LACE really work? Like what makes this thing actually drive 2 to 3 dB better in the booth on average, and certainly more in many patients, which is can be a 15 to 20% or even more improvement in your sentence recognition. And if you think about daily life, if I miss 1 out of 6 words or 1 out of 4 sentences and you give that back to me, suddenly I'm participating in life again.
Absolutely.
It's a very meaningful. So when we say 2 to 3 dB, that's a little techie, but to make no mistake, it is a very meaningful difference in people's lives. That's
right. Yeah, you could argue 10% improvement in intelligibility for every 1 decibel signal to noise ratio improvement on that.
That's right. Yeah, that's
because I'm a layman. I like to say it very simply for folks. It can be the difference between being completely lost and not participating in a conversation and being, there's patients, I'm sure some of you guys listening right now, avoiding social situations because it's just not fun because you can't hear. And so you avoid these things. By the way, we should talk about the implications of that. But just to stick to the point, that improvement, that 2-3 dB improvement translates into that 10 to 25% improvement in your ability to hear in real life conversation. And that is the difference between being completely lost and checked out or being an active participant in the conversation. I mean, it can be a night and day difference for patients.
It's an interesting thing too, that like if you're looking for an additional 2 to 3 decibel of improvement with a hearing aid, you're spending thousands of more dollars usually to get improvement in technology
Yeah.
to try to accomplish that for you, and for significantly less, and just for the your time in addition, is that you can get these significant benefits without having to upgrade hearing aid technology necessarily, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, that's right. And no matter what hearing aids you get, they might get the sound into your brain. But if I can't remember what you said, or if it happened too fast and I can't parse it, or I don't have the deductive reasoning skills to fill in the blanks, or I'm competing with different sources of background noise, I still could be totally lost in that conversation. And so I think these things go hand in hand. But to get back to the question you had asked, what makes LACE really work under the hood, right? And the magic and the reason that you can't just go listen to audiobooks or podcasts or watch TV with captions, like some people think, oh, maybe I can train by reading the captions. And the reason that will never give you the same kind of benefit is that what LACE is doing is taking the difficulty level of all of these exercises, and we're finding the threshold of your ability right where things get hard. And this maximizes neuroplasticity in the brain. This allows you to learn optimally. And if you don't do that, then it's sort of like going to the gym and lifting really tiny weights and then leaving. Like, you can be consistent with it, but nothing's going to happen. You have to stress out your muscles and get to the edge of your ability. And then if you keep doing that, your muscles will grow and you'll get stronger, right? We call this dynamic threshold training. And it's really the secret sauce under each of the LACE lessons. It's that if you are doing speech and noise training, we'll take that noise level right to where, okay, I can hear that, but just barely. And that's your brain is doing the work. And over time, as you gain the skills, you'll find that the noise level increases, and that's your brain getting better at hearing in noise. And you're going to have days that things are a little harder. And as you use LACE, it'll actually come down, it'll find the threshold again, so that you're always training at your level. But what we find is if people do this, and I don't think we've said how much you have to do to get the benefits, but if people do this just 15 minutes a day for 1 month, they're getting a very meaningful, that clinically effective dose of 2 or 3 dB we were talking about over the course of a month. And we're seeing that noise level increase in those patients as they're just getting better and better at parsing. We do the same thing with the rapid speech and the same thing with the working memory and with deductive reasoning. There are ways that we are increasing the difficulty, keeping you right at the threshold of your ability. Now, if we just did that, it might be kind of hard because that is your brain doing the work. And so we are doing a lot of smart things to say, and borrowing ideas from psychology and just other ways to keep people engaged, where we say, let's warm you up into an exercise. Let's detect if you're having a little trouble and make sure we give you something a little easier. So it's not like you're just doing hard work the whole time, but we're very aware of what needs to happen for people to maximize their benefit. The last thing I'll say here is you cannot do that in the real world. If you were to go to, say you just got new hearing aids and the world just sounds different, it's just not what you're used to, and it's a new appliance and your confidence may not be at the highest, right? You have to build some confidence with this new device. You're not going to go to a restaurant and ask everybody to bring the conversation level down to just where it's a little difficult.
I mean, that'd be nice.
You could try.
You could try.
You could ask.
Ding, ding,
but
ding.
it's not
Hey,
gonna happen.
could you guys all keep talking, but just bring it down just slightly? And then
I'm trying to train here.
Yeah, I'm trying to train.
Yeah.
So it's just not feasible, right? And so we're giving people a safe place where they can practice with their devices, their new hearing aids or cochlear implants, or even without hearing aids, just to gain that confidence and use this principle of dynamic threshold training and neuroplasticity to maximize the impact.
Well, it's interesting, again, I'm gonna always bring it back to, because I've been working with patients with this training for a year at this point. Some patients, they are like, man, I'm doing this training, I feel like I'm not getting any better. I'm like, oh no, you're getting better. I can see the data coming across. You're getting better, but it's scaling it to how much better you are now. So it's always going to make it more difficult.
Right.
Just like you were talking about at the gym.
They might not
you
even
get this
realize it.
progressive overload in the gym where you're actually
right.
getting stronger, and it's like your workouts don't get easier at the gym. You just end up lifting more weight or you do more reps, right?
Exactly right.
Same concept here.
That's exactly right. And just to make it crystal clear for folks, we have 27 different levels of background noise. Miles, Dr. Aaron has said, forgive me, it's Dr. Aaron
You can
today.
call me Miles.
All right,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right, all right. Talked about increasing the noise. We're automatically increasing the background noise as the patient improves and can handle that level of background noise. And right inside the app, we show both the patient and we report back to the practitioner, their audiologist, those results. And so inside the app, you can see, oh, look at that. I started here. When I started, half the time I said no, I couldn't understand it with this level of background noise. And now, a month later, I'm here, and we show patients that. You're right, though. They don't necessarily even realize that we're ramping up that
Right.
background noise because there's 27 different levels. And everything I just said is true of the way all the exercises work. So we make the working memory exercises incrementally harder or less difficult, so that we're putting the patient at their threshold of ability. It really is like going to the gym. It's a great analogy, because by going and working out, in this case your brain is adapting through neuroplasticity. Your brain is a pretty amazing device that we all are born with, right? And it can change and it can adapt. It's the reason why you can play Wordle or chess or tennis and start off at one level and get better over time. It's the same process, and you can practice these skills and get better at them and become a better communicator. And that's what it's all about. And that dynamic threshold training maximizes the time that you spend. So that's where we can get the results with somebody doing it as little as 15, 20 minutes a day. Because it's good quality work, the patient gets the results.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that because you're talking about this clinically meaningful improvement in an individual's ability to process what they're hearing. But there are also what do you guys call them, super users out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a patient actually, and he's going to be coming on the podcast here on a different day. But he's going to be talking about how even with his severe to profound level hearing loss, how he doesn't do just the minimum on the training. He is like addicted to it, right? And I'm starting to question whether or not he's spending enough time with his family, because all he does is do auditory training all the time. But his scores are almost unbelievable. I actually did a video on this individual already on my channel. If you guys want to check it out, you can do a search for that. But I mean, he will do multiple sessions. He probably trains, an hour to 2 hours a day using this platform,
Wow.
changing between, speech and noise training, working memory training, rapid speech training, what have you.
By the way, not to interrupt, I think that speaks to how much fun it is. But there's people that are doing this because they know it's good for them, but it's also like fun and engaging. Like
Well, I would agree, and
so
it probably is, and that's probably what initially got him to do
yeah,
it more often. But when he started seeing the results, is when
right.
he's like, "Holy cow! Like, if I do more training, now I can actually go into these environments that I could have never gone into before
Yeah.
with my severe to profound level hearing loss, and now I can function." And his signal to noise ratio loss score, his LACE SIN score inside of the app, is a 4. And this dude in testing in my clinic was at like a 20 signal to noise ratio loss. And for those of you who don't understand how big of a difference that is, getting a 16-point improvement, right? If you just take 10% for every 1 decibel improvement in ability to hear in background noise, was like 160% improvement there.
Right.
And maybe I shouldn't say it like that, but basically taking someone who completely non-functional in a moderately noisy environment to now can go to a moderately noisy environment and be able to I can have conversation and not have difficulty there.
Yeah, and we've heard from patients who, one patient told me he would come home from work and he would take his hearing aids out and he'd run a bath, he'd turn off the lights, and he's like, I just can't engage. He's like, I can't spend time with my family in an engaging way. I'm so exhausted from just trying to make it through the day with all the noise in a probably moderately quiet office space, and he said he's another LACE user who's been very engaged with the product, and said he no longer does that at all.
Yeah.
Like he's just like that whole period of his life is over. Now he's like, yeah, I just go through my whole day and I just engage with the world the way I used to before hearing loss. And it's
It kind of it's
pretty amazing.
interesting,
Yeah.
because people when they first start, we'll use the working out analogy since we've used it a number of times now. But you start working out, you typically do the minimum that you do to get sore and know that you're doing something, right? And then as time goes on, you get better, and then you realize, well, I've got to actually work out longer, and I can get stronger or faster or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden, you're signing up from a 5K going to a marathon, right?
Yeah.
And now you're this super user that like now you're really good at processing what you're hearing, and as long as again you're getting the right amount of sound from the hearing aids up to the brain, now the brain knows what to do with that sound.
That's right. I'm sure you've talked about this in the past, but this is true for anybody who's getting a new set of hearing aids. This is true for people who there are conditions like auditory processing disorder where you don't even hearing aids aren't going to help you. So everybody along the sort of hearing loss spectrum can benefit from this because it truly is brain training. But if we talk about that patient who's coming in to get their first hearing aid, they maybe haven't gotten a proper signal to their brain. People procrastinate, right? And maybe they haven't been hearing properly for a decade or more. And now the hearing aid is sending in this signal and the brain is saying, what the heck is that? What do I do with this? I want to be really, really clear. All those other use cases are really important, and we have some potentially profound impacts on people's lives, even when they don't need hearing aids. But in this particular case, it just really, I think it's striking how much benefit a patient like that can get. Because their brain is just getting a whole avalanche, if you will, of new information to it with every sound that's coming through those devices. And the brain needs to know what to do with it, and the brain can know what to do with it through some basic practice on these things. And so that, in a nutshell, is what auditory training and aural rehab in particular is designed to do.
One interesting thing that we haven't talked about yet, that the AI aspect of the app is it really shocks a lot of people when I tell them all the features that the app can do, is the familiar voices.
Yeah.
So this whole idea that like, well, I just really struggle with my wife's voice or my husband's voice or my grandchild's voice, whatever the case may be. There's a way that you can have this significant other or main communication partner that you have, actually you send a link to them, they read this passage into their device, they save it, and now Lace AI Pro uses their tonality, their voice for the auditory training. And now all of a sudden, instead of just taking a generic voice that you guys have built inside of the app, you're now using someone's voice that you truly care about hearing better, so you can hear them specifically better.
Yeah, I mean, we just got, I want you to talk about the science part of this because there's some neat stuff there. But yeah, we're the only people in the world doing this. To the best of my knowledge. We are the only people in the world doing this. And this is the kind of thing that wasn't possible, call it 2 years ago now. So yeah, a patient can invite their favorite niece or nephew or grandson or granddaughter. I guess we're not supposed to have favorites, but we all do.
We all have
do, right?
Clearly.
Okay, so
I mean, like I'm the favorite, grandson and
you
nephew of everybody.
You keep telling yourself that. Yeah, that's right. But no, the patient can invite any number of people in their lives into the app. Those people will record 20 seconds of their voice, and then we capture that voice, and it can be used inside the app, and all those thousands of pieces of content I talked about could be coming from your favorite niece. Your favorite niece could be helping you practice your vocabulary or telling you jokes, or you could be playing trivia. I mean, we really worked hard to make it fun and engaging, but it's more than that, right? Patients' hearing is their connection to those people, and this is what patients want, right? But it turns out it's even more effective than traditional auditory training. And so for that, I think you're best to answer.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been known for a long time in the research that the brain has a special way of encoding a familiar voice. That when you listen to sea of people talking, let's say 8 people talking at once or 5 people talking at once, and it's just cacophonous, right? If my mother was in that crowd talking, I'd probably be able to pick her out much easier than somebody I didn't recognize. And that's just an evolutionary ability we have to encode these voices. What researchers used to do was record people and just play those to you, and then play people you didn't know, and that's how they were able to do the research. Of course, what we're doing, bringing that to tens of thousands of patients, is only possible with AI.
Right.
But what the research showed was that not only is this that meaningful and impactful and engaging feature, it actually results in better training as well. And it's a 10 to 20% difference depending on where you are in the hearing loss spectrum. But a 20% difference is a huge deal. And it's with the people that you care about hearing the most.
Just to be clear, a 10 to 20% difference as compared to normal auditory training.
On top of.
This is a boost beyond just listening to a generic voice. So everything we've been talking about this whole time has been about what I would call generic auditory training, listening to other people's voices. On top of those results, on top of everything we just said, is this additional improvement by listening to familiar voices. So it's super cool, it's fun, it's what patients want, and it's clinically more effective.
So what you're saying is it is impossible for LACE AI Pro to get any better than what it is right now.
I didn't exactly say that.
You're throwing a softball. Yeah, we got lots of cool stuff.
So kind of bring us up to speed. I mean, it's really exciting. So just in case individuals out there watching don't understand this concept, when you enroll in LACE AI Pro, either you're purchasing the app, I have a link in the description for you guys with the discount code if you want to purchase it yourself. It is also a very good idea that you find a hearing care professional who uses LACE AI Pro inside of their clinic. I will have a link down in the description for that as well, because then you actually have a professional who's monitoring the benefit that you're getting from it. They're providing you encouragement, so on and so forth. I'm obviously a big proponent of following or finding a hearing care professional who follows comprehensive best practices like you can find inside of my Hearing Up Network. And there are a lot of Hearing Up Network members who are offering LACE AI Pro, but you essentially purchase it, or the providers might include it inside of a new hearing aid treatment, something like that. But that's how you get access to it. And it's important to note that it is a lifetime license of LACE AI Pro. So even what you guys had a year ago has been improved upon at this point right now, and everyone who essentially purchased the app access a year ago is getting all of these new features. So that shouldn't prevent you if you guys come out with something new, which I have a feeling we're going to talk about some new stuff here. But if you guys release new stuff inside of the app and you have purchased it 6 months ago, you get access to the new features inside of the app. So I guess my question here is that what new is coming down the road? And if you can share any of that. Exclusively here on the Dr. Cliff Show.
Yeah, absolutely we can. If you want to start, feel free.
So many things to talk about. I think Rick mentioned the lip reading and speech reading module that's coming. I think that kind of completes the 5 ways that we address these skills in the brain that you can improve for communication. We're very excited about a kids app that's coming out soon, and so LACE for Kids is going to be a big deal. If you're listening and you have a child who has hearing loss, the content that's appropriate for adults is probably not the most exciting for like a 9-year-old, right? And so we're going to have a very
1970s trivia.
Yeah, they're not very good at it, I've found.
Turns out. I'm not very good at it either.
Me neither.
But yeah, we'll have a bunch of fun content for kids. The app will feel more kid-friendly. The avatars will be more engaging without spoiling too much of it. It's going to be a really incredible experience for our younger folks with hearing loss. And then there are some very exciting things coming around AI counseling. Right now we have a video library it's what every audiologist dreams their patients would have in the palm of their pockets. Everything that you should know about hearing loss, it's communication tips, it's strategies, it's how to inform loved ones about how they can interact with you to make your hearing loss journey easier. There's so many great tips in there. It is a video library, though. It is not an interactive experience. We're now going to kind of supercharge that with AI so that you can actually have an open-ended conversation and start to get the counseling that is part of an umbrella called oral rehabilitation, which is just rehabilitation of hearing. And so where you have auditory training on one side, can have counseling and education on the other, and these things brought together drive even better results. And so that's a really exciting feature that's coming out. We're doing some very exciting and technical things around making the auditory training even better that nobody has done yet, which involves just bringing a level of intelligence. And so we talked about dynamic threshold training and how we keep people right at the threshold of their ability. Right now, that threshold is based on whether you can get something right or wrong. In the future, not too distant future, we will be able to do a level of auditory training where we're actually parsing out every little part of the sentence you're listening to. That could be the sounds in the words, the grade level, the complexity, the pacing, all the things that impact your ability to hear. And we can build almost like a fingerprint or a profile of somebody's hearing ability. And then we can serve up content to dial in and fix and work on certain issues that are more difficult. So we're taking that neuroplasticity, just imagine it's going to a much deeper level. And audiologists have sort of dreamed about this. There's always been two camps of auditory training, like, hey, do we work on the little syllables, the SH sound, the CH sound, the P versus the B, and all that kind of nuance, or do we bring you into the real world with context the way that LACE does? And we think that AI is the key to like bringing those both together while keeping this super engaging format.
I find that to be super fascinating, and I
It's
look
going to be
forward
neat.
to like the data that I can see as a provider, and then ultimately when I'm doing performance outcome measures with my patients with their treatment, which when I say treatment I mean like all encompassing, right? The hearing aid side of things, or maybe the cochlear implant side of things, and then the auditory training to create an entire complete treatment, not just one treatment or the other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to put up with these big brains all the time. So I like to view my role as like sort of translating and making things sound a little bit
Bring it down to
simpler.
earth
But I
for
think,
us.
although you did, I think, a really good job. Yeah, today we have this dynamic threshold training. And so we understand your threshold of ability, but it's a flat thing. We say they can either understand this or they can't. What if a patient's threshold was limited because they just couldn't process, they had trouble processing a TH sound, and that was the thing that, is very common in language, and that is the thing that they're having the hardest time understanding. And if they were better at that one thing or that thing and something else, their overall threshold jumps way up. We're actually working on projects that are enabling us to identify those very specific things that might be holding a patient back in order to raise their threshold and if you will, hyper target the treatment, the auditory training to the weaknesses of the patient. So that's what auditory training looks like in the next 5 years, in the next 3 years. And we're working on that. You pointed out the lifetime license. If it's not obvious, we are super, super passionate about what we're doing, and we want every patient to have auditory training, frankly, and we want every patient to have the latest and greatest. And so all of our patients will get the latest and greatest as we develop it. And so this is something that you can use for the rest of your life.
That's awesome.
Without additional cost.
Well, I'm going to act as a representative for the entire profession of audiology and say thank you, guys, because you kind of like resurrected something that we all wanted to be like the standard years and years ago.
Yeah.
And it was something that I know personally a lot of audiologists were like, man, I really want to do auditory training, oral rehabilitation with my patients, but there's no feasible way for us to do it and do a really good job of it for them. And you guys have come in here within just the past couple of years and have totally changed that, not just for patients, but for professionals who are really striving to do the absolute best that we possibly can for our patients. And without you guys doing this, I don't know where we would be with the auditory training side of things. I mean, I think we'd still be spinning our wheels trying to get people to go to this website that still existed. Like they could
Yeah.
still go and do it. they just weren't. And I mean, if I looked at my full database of patients, I think I was probably successful with maybe a handful of them, getting them to go and do the auditory training because I was convincing enough to have them suffer through the boring side of training.
Sure.
And now seeing those exact same handful of patients who've had the direct comparison, there is no comparison. Like Lace AI Pro has totally changed everything. And to think that you guys are still improving that above and beyond what it is right now kind of blows my mind. And I'm really excited for everyone who has access to that auditory training right now and who's going to gain access, not just from this podcast, but from the influence of all of their providers. Because you said you've got how many clinics that are on board with offering this?
Yeah, well, before I answer that, it's very, very, very kind of you and I to say those things about us, and
Yeah,
so that's
thank
great.
you. It means a lot.
And I just want you to know that there is a incredibly dedicated team. We get to be on this podcast and talk about what we do and meet patients and clinicians who are using the technology now, and it's super gratifying. But there is a team of incredibly dedicated developers and product people, and again, you know, Dr. Sweeto, and we haven't mentioned Dr. Ty Murray and others that really help us shape what we should be doing. So there's a whole team behind us that is it's their life's work, frankly, and so I just want to mention that. To answer your question, since we launched Lace AI Pro last year, and I call it July, we've had hundreds and hundreds of practices, clinic locations sign up. I think we're, you know, probably approaching 800 right now, and so it really has been this thing where the profession has it's I think you described it quite well. Audiologists want to do the right thing for their patients. It just hasn't been practical before. It hasn't been something that has been put into a form factor that allows patients to do this work, and we do feel like we've sort of cracked that code, if you will, and so practitioners are signing up and offering auditory training and oral rehab now at sort of a breakneck speed, and it's incredibly gratifying. And so you can see that on our website. The folks at in the Hearing Up Network are, we have anybody who is offering LACE, it's probably a really good sign that they are following best practices. For certain. And so, you know, all of those providers you can see on our website are there, but you can also see the Hearing Up folks, and I know you've got a whole standard that you put in place before somebody can call themselves a Hearing Up provider. And so, you know, I'd encourage you to go to one of those folks, frankly. So, yeah, really, really good stuff.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks for coming all the way out here. I know you had to come from Florida Gator,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you had to come. You recently moved to Boston, so you had to
That's
come out
right,
here from Boston.
It's
so
my pleasure. It's beautiful out here.
you know, as a small token of my thanks for that, everyone who comes out here to get on the show, I give them a gift.
Oh,
So,
no way.
I've got
I'd have come
to
sooner.
right?
Wow, thank you.
This is really funny because I saw this
Yeah.
over here, and I almost made a joke about wanting one of these.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
I got it.
awesome.
You got your own Dr. Cliff Show mugs in there, so
that's
really
you
great.
know, make up for some of the travel costs of you guys coming out
Super
here.
fun.
Oh, that's going to be
Super
sitting on my desk. That's awesome.
Thank you very
Awesome.
much. That's
Awesome.
good.
Well, thank you guys so much. We actually have more stuff to talk about stuff that is not related to auditory training, but it's related to tinnitus, because you guys have a new Tinnitus Pro app.
That's right.
That's out, which we'll talk about in a different episode, though, guys. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, do me a huge favor, click the like button. It really helps out the channel. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well. And if you want more information about everything that we talked about here today, go to the description of this video. We'll have a bunch of links down there. If you want to get Lace AI Pro, you can get it down there. If you want to learn more about Neurotone AI, you can click the links down there. But as always, guys, we'll see you next time.